Hello, hi everybody, and a very good afternoon to all of you. And then first of all, is thank you very much for your for registering for this April Past Journal Club. So my name is Mohammad Khairul Amin, is a lecturer and a simulation coordinator for University Brunei Darussalam. So a bit of the about my experience in simulation is I started in 2012 as the coordinators and then running all the program for our nursing, paramedic, medical, and as well as our midwifery program. So I started in 2012. The first simulators that we operate on is actually I-STAN. So from there on, we progress with the other type of simulators. So for today's article, so I actually choose an article with this is the author by the Adam Cheng, Kat Moss, and al. So basically the topic is about learner-centered debriefing for healthcare simulation education. It's a lessons for faculty development. So this is when it's been published in Sim Healthcare, the issue, and then was published in 2016. So it's relatively still a very new article. So why did I actually choose these articles is because that simulation and debriefings that we cannot split them apart. So I have looked a lot on debriefing article and the literature about it. But what catch my attention is about this article is the term that they use is learner-centered debriefing and how they are different. So that is where is not going. Hang on, Joyan, why my slide is not going?
Oh, that's a good question.
Okay. So this is the first page of the articles. So with a summary about what it is all about. So debriefing practices that enhance the impact of simulation-based education. So how is actually it is different between learner-centered debriefing and compared to instructor-centered debriefing. So these are two things what this article is actually going to describe about. So this is about the layout of the article. So I'll put it into some form of diagram to capture what it is actually about. So first thing is that article in the content is talking about the teaching styles, what it is. There's two teaching styles that they have described. One is called the instructor-centered teaching, ICT, and the second one is called the learner-centered teaching, LCT. So how we are going to use this in simulation perspective. So how we transfer whatever it is the concept or the principles of this teaching style into simulation-based or simulation debriefing style. So that's the term that is used, instructor-centered debriefing, and second is the learner-centered debriefing. And the next part of the paper was actually looking into the debriefing phases. There is the one that they use is actually to describe how we use these two debriefing style is using the phases of reaction, analysis, and summary. For those in simulation, there is many more debriefing method that can be used. I'll put two here, like the GAS, which is called the gathered analysis and summary, or the delta, the pro and con, and what else? There are many more. That is, I will be there's more list toward the end of my slide later on. And then I'll put the outcome, what is toward the end of the article, and how using the whatever concept from here and this one, and how we're going to use a difference between ICD, that is the instructor-centered debriefing. Either we're going to use LCD, that is learner-centered debriefing, or it could be a combination of both. How? So in educational literatures that describe there is many teaching style from LCT to ICT, so which means either they are teacher-centered or learner-centered. Some example is doing lecture that is basically is a traditional one for the teacher-centered, and then for learner-centered it might be one example is the problem-based learning. So in this article there is one statement which is actually interested me, because he said that although different approaches to debriefing to simulation-based education exist, simulation literature is largely mute. This is the term they use, a strong term, largely mute on the topic of learner-centered debriefing. So they have two purposes in this article. The purpose number one is looking into here, this area, and the purpose number two is looking in this area. That is basically the first one is to describe learner versus instructor-centered method of teaching. That is the first part, focus on teaching perspectives. And then the second part is focus on simulation perspective. That is to highlight strategies for incorporating learner-centered method into debriefing. So this is some of the objective. First is to compare and contrast what learner and the instructor-centered approaches to teaching, and then the rationale why learner-centered approaches is good for debriefing. And then there is one, they introduced a conceptual framework, which means that the highlighting about 4 dimensions about learner versus instructor-centered debriefing. So that one is in a table form that will be described in later stage in my slide. So they also look into the variables, something like is the factors that influence us or that will determine for us to decide or to identify if we are going for instructor-centered or could be a learner-centered, or we use a combination of both method. So, and the last part of the article is about describe practical learner-centered strategies to various debriefing phases. So how we are going to use this LCD or learner-centered debriefing in debriefing process. So we look into teaching perspective first. This is part of the purpose number one of that article. So one is the learner-centered teaching approach, mean looking into, I highlight into this is the term, okay, is look into construct the knowledge in the skill, okay, where the environment for both instructor and the student learn, mean the something is like we are transferring the knowledge to the learner, well as, sorry, this is the other way around, where both learner and instructor actually collaborate or kind of discuss together the points that they want to discuss, well as the instructor, this one ICT, I think my term is ICT, instructor-centered teaching is transmitting the information. So we expect when we transmit the information, the learners should able to understand it at least, or able to describe it and memorize and remember what has been transferred to them. So these are multiple that they use is a stage on the stage. But this is one of the figure in that article. So looking into the differences between the teaching, these two teaching methods. So if you look into this, I have explained just now the choice of topic and objective, and then the learner is contribute to address the gap in knowledge and performance, and both instructors and trainees learn together. I mean this one is basically is a bilateral learning, which means that both sides, the teachers or the instructors as well as the student, form the learning process. On the other hand, for the instructors side, this is basically is unilateral. Unilateral means that it's just like a one way. I'll tell you, and then the learner should able to grasp it and able to understand what has been told. So it's more into unilateral perspective. Okay, next, this is now we are moving away from the teaching perspective. We are going to start on the simulation perspective. So there is a conceptual framework that they have put in this article. So that is how learner versus instructor-centered debriefing, that is using the Weimer's key concept. So I think this one is in page 3 of it. Okay, what is the key concept? In that table, there is actually, this is the 4 key concepts of the framework. One is the function of the content, looking into this concept. Second is the role of the instructor. And third is the responsibility for learning. And fourth is the balance of power. So who's control the learning? So look into the first one. So this is the component for the first concept. First one is there's 2 components that has been illustrated. This one going to, I will display the actual table after this. So I'll just read it through. So the first one in this content is that student engagement in content, what they can contribute. Second one is the use of the content to facilitate future learning and application in the real clinical environment. And then role of instructor, how the instructor create the environment for learning. Was it one-sided? Was it they have to consider to the learning, the learners that has the learners. Second is use of the language and the tone of the voice when we do the debriefing. Do it more into our side, or that we have to consider into the learner's perspective. And then third in this concept is that the component is alignment of course objective with teaching and learning methods. What does it mean is that either the objective is being set by the instructor, or the objective is being set both by the instructors as well as the learner, which is being during the debriefing. Okay, responsibility for learning. Responsibility for learning, and then assessment of learner strengths and weaknesses. Was it the instructor that actually identified that, or we allow the learners to identify their strengths and weaknesses? So there is an assessment of summary from simulation plus debriefing. Okay, balance of power. So this is the concept, determination of the content, flow of the discussion, and expression of alternate perspective, and the use of open, closed-ended question. So each of these actually in the article there is an example. So let me look into the first one. So I highlight some of the components. I'm going through because of the time. I think so. It is a bit limited to run everything, so I'll just select a few. So one of the components in the function of content is the engagement of the content. So this is what is being stated here. Instructor provide the fact and knowledge via didactic so that student can take a new material as given to them. So I mean instruction from the instructor. From the other hand, for the learner, we allow the student actually the instructor facilitate discussion and reflective learning in the fact that knowledge and allowing students to make their own meaning out of it. And some here, in terms of the engagement content, instructor do the assessment on the performance of the student, what they think about student performance, rather than the students self-assess their outcome, how they perform, why they do that. Yeah. And then, in terms of the content-wise, so we expect them in this instructor side, I expected them to understand. We transfer the knowledge to them, and then you understand and memorize what has been defined by the instructor. And then on the other hand, in the learner perspective, we do not expected them to memorize it, but actually for them to develop their critical thinking skill, their explorative skill on, or their how they explore and how they identify their own strength, for example, on their own weaknesses, what they do best during the simulation activity. So we move into the role of the instructor. Okay, one is unilateral, mean that one direction from me as the instructor to the learners, but this one is both sides. Okay, the learning objective is created during the debriefing between learners as well as the instructor. And look into this one. So this one is in ICT, the instructor unilaterally determine the method of the debriefing, which means that this is the word independent of the learner preferences. So which means that in one way that's saying that you're not really looking into the learner perspective of the objective. So what you want to do is what is important for the student to know, so the objective will be based on that. On the other hand, instructor adapt the method of debriefing that fits to learner needs. So we're looking into what the student want to learn, and at the same time as well, the learners have to express or have to explore their thought and what they are thinking as well, knowledge base and everything. So the second component, I'll just look into the last bit of it. Okay, assessment and summary of the learning from simulation plus debriefing. So this is the responsibility for learning. So the last component. Usually the instructor in this ICT, instructor summarize by stating important take-home message. So it's just like during this during the simulation session, the instructor will identify what is the learning outcome for the student. So what they have to learn at home, for example, after the simulation. So something that they cannot do it during the simulation or during the debriefing, the instructor will tell them what or how their performance is all about. And here, instructor asks the student what they learn and their main message or main point that they have to take home. So it's just like we allow the student to say something, or allow the student to express what is the learning experience or something that they learn from the simulation, or what they want to share with their colleague as well, and what they want to contribute to their practice. So balance of power, this is I think the last component. So the balance of power, determine the content or priority. You take the priority. What is the content? In here is the instructor predominantly choose topic and discuss them in order based on his or her own expertise. So assessment is perceived important. So you prioritize based on the simulation. What is the outcome? What is the activity which is important, or the objective which is important for the session? Here is the choose the topic and discuss in order based on learner interest and as well as concern. So this is looking into the student interest rather than what the instructor think is important to them. For some is using, here is I think the last bit of it. The discussion point is managed by the instructor. Here there are two ways that is collaboratively manage the flow, transition of discussion of point based on learner interest and concern. All right. So that is just now is some of the concept that can be differentiated and how we use debriefing. Either we are looking into the instructor perspective or looking into the learner perspective. Although the article said that it is encouraged to go into the learner-centered debriefing, but there is some factors or variables whereby that learner-centered or full capacity of learner-centered debriefing is not possible. So that one need to be recognized and need for instructor to actively manage the balance and to meet the best meet learner needs. So we look into this one. What does it mean is that because not all the time that we can go into learner-centered debriefing, but one of the reasons why is the time factors. First one is the time factors, because sometimes we do have enough time to do it, but sometimes we don't. So that is the point, or sometimes that the instructor realized that there is not enough time to cover everything. So what the instructor will do is that they will set what is the main priority for that session. If we have a longer time, like for example, this one has 45 minutes to debrief a team that has just managed complicated trauma patient. So debriefing method engage learner in reflection to identify and address issue learner agenda through group discussion. So that is possible. So 45 minutes. If you just only have like 10 or 15 minutes, so discussion is only end up with 1 point. So another rationale is that knowledge factors, so experience of the learners. So learners who sometimes we do debriefing is a novice learners, sometimes they're intermediate, sometimes they're advanced. So this is where we can usually affect our debriefing style. So the rationale is that sometimes there is a too little knowledge from the learners, especially the novice one, even though how much that you want to get information from them, they are unable to contribute something compared to those learners who has a high degree or moderate degree of background and knowledge on that clinical experience. So we do come across a lot on this as well during our simulation activity. So the third one is something to do with culture. So they give 2 examples here. This is one of the examples that some culture is in whereby that we don't actually for hierarchy reason. Okay, for example, here you get the example in some Asian countries, instructor and are predominantly teaching during debriefing has learners most part quiet and hesitant to participate in the discussion. And compared to here, the example is not America. They're moving to a learner-centered debriefing where learner view as vital contributors to learning process. So we do come across something like this, but it's, again, depend on the not only a culture, I guess, is the personal attributes of the student. Some are very vocal and some are not. So that will have some influence in terms of our debriefing technique. So how we are going to, so this is the other part. So moving into implementing learner-centered debriefing. So knowing all the knowledge that they have been elaborated just now, compare between what's the difference between instructor as well as learner-centered debriefing and other factors that could influence it. So now we move on implementing learner-centered debriefing. How we are going to implement learner-centered debriefing. So there are many approaches, or this is just a method to promote reflective learning. For example, debriefing for meaningful learning, team gains, case, pro and cons, debriefing with good judgment. So this is the model of debriefing, how we are going to, it's just like a framework, how we run the debriefing. But strategies-wise, whatever it is using this model, most of it in debriefing contain the same process. One is the reaction phase, analysis phase, and the summary phase. So they will describe in this article implementing learner-centered debriefing based on these phases. So how that's going to be done. All right. Okay, during the reaction phase, for example, so I'm only in the article there is one more column here, which is the instructor approach. But I'm just look into these two, how we balance, that is, we incorporate aspect of LCT with ICT, and another one is how we do as a learner-centered debriefing approach. Or let's look into the first phase, which is the reaction phase. So in incorporating here, we use LCT and ICT together. So instructor usually provide opportunity for some but not all learners to share their initial thoughts. So mean that if you have like 10 students for the debriefing, maybe you just ask or some of them or 5 of them to express their opinion, what they think about the about their learning experience during the simulation. And then if that was not being captured during by the student, the instructor will add on what it is other thing that they should learn. So which means is the both side. One is from the student and then another one is from the instructors. With the learner-centered debriefing approach, learners are provided ample opportunity for all learners to share their emotion and initial reaction to their simulated events.
16th
Okay? So this is the one. Instructor verbally acknowledge the agenda as topic arise and validate the learner agenda by summarizing what the learners has heard and what has been said by the learners before they move into the analysis. So which means it's something like you can list down what is the objective that they learn from the simulation and what they want to discuss, and then that is gathered from the learners, and then before we move into the next phases. But the second one, this one, sorry, is too small. You still can see it. So how that it is, this is the second phase of debriefing, the analysis phase. So one is how we are going to priority the discussion content. So a mixed method, I call this one a mixed method, which means the LCT and the ICT. First learner agenda first, and then move to discussing topic who important to him or her. Then the instructor does not discuss item brought up by the learners beyond those were initially brought up during the reaction phase, which means that if there is some topic during the learners has unable to identify that, then the instructors will brought up to the learners. Okay, in the other one, so to discuss item which is common agenda first, ensure that both the learners' need and predefined learning objective are discussed. So when exploring a rationale for behavior, so for this one, instructor present his or view only in the rationale why the learner need to change his or her perspective. For this one, throughout the discussion at the point of view, and then from the learners, instructors strive to balance closure of the knowledge gap. So which means this is what? How they close the gap, the performance. So this one is like in the mixed method, they use a directive feedback to close performance gap for some behaviors. And then for here, they allow for the learners to do it with group reflection and discussion. So could be this one is that sometime after that, after the student do it, and then the instructor will add on some point. So it's become a mixed method. Okay, summary phase. So the mixed method, instructor provide learner with opportunity to express their own take-home message, but also include his or her assessment of what the learner should learn. So which means it is both. The summary phase is actually to get the summary from the student, but at the same time, the instructor will tell them as well what the based on their based on the activity, what are the point, what is the knowledge or the experience based on the instructor assessment. So on learner perspective, this one is the LCD. Instructor provide learner the opportunity to express their main take-home message from the experience. So instructor is also thoughtful in his or her approach to debriefing to leave enough time to not rush this phase of debriefing. So this one means allow the time for them to summarize it rather than pushing them to do it as quick as they can. That's the one. So what is the future direction? This is the recommendation from the articles. So there is a three things that they have highlighted. The first one is that instructor to reflect their own debriefing style and try to choose concept strategies for learner-centered debriefing. So I mean reflect and as much as possible use this learner-centered debriefing. But again, have to consider the other variables or factors that may influence the strategies. Second one is the theoretical and empirical work is to ascertain how to optimize the balance of LCT and ICT, given time constraint, cultural differences, and learner background. So this is how we look at the limiting factors. That is the key variable that has been mentioned. One is about the culture, time factors, as well as the learner attributes, how we can improve on this. Okay, future research should explore the relative benefits of LCT-ICT as they are applied to debriefing and identify the strategies suited to promote effective learning. So how these two can be combined. So more research that need to be done on this aspect. So what's point to be considered? First one is that debriefing is the integral part of simulation learning, where knowledge, practice, and attitudes during the simulation can be reflected to form a concrete understanding about the scenario. Second, debriefing can be focused on either ICD, LCD, or mixed to maximize learner learning based on variable factors. So variable is the one that I've been mentioned just now about the time and the cultural perspective. So encourage guide on the side, which means that we are not telling them what, telling them or giving them the information straight away. Then stage on, this is the giving information, this is the guide, mean that this is collaborative rather than unilateral. So we guide them, we take their point, and then rather than stage on the stage, this is the transmission of the knowledge. What I know, I'll give it to you. Active learning, then passive learning. So transmission of the instructor has an advocate to the learning style, and then student from moving from receiving to nurturing the information rather than they just receive, try to understand and memorize the information, but they need to nurture it and give a meaning of what they have learned. So we need, as instructor, we need reassess on the technique. So where we fit in based on what has been laid out in this article. So perhaps there is more debriefing faculty development is needed. So it could be we need to standardize debriefing technique among faculty. So could be some institution may have a different technique. So there is no common standard that has been in practice. So different instructors have their own way of style of doing it. So debriefing, practice, and practice, because it looks simple, but sometimes it really take a lot of time. So that's the end of from the article. So we still have time for discussion, I guess, around 20 minutes. So this is something that actually I put in about how we are going to deal with, if we go into a learner-centered debriefing, how we are going to make the passive learner become active. Okay, after debriefing, what should be done? Or do we have anything follow up, or just the debriefing we stop there? What about if there is no answer from the participant? And what about a large group of learners? So how we are going to deal with a group, a large group of learner, and then debriefing method that we use. So now we open for question and answer or discussion, or could be want to share your experience with the rest.
Okay, so I have a question here. Thank you so much for doing the presentation. My first question is, the few models you shared, right? They were all developed from the West, either in US or Canada, right? So it's all based on Western culture. Like you mentioned in one of your slides, you see culture is one of that.
I lost you. I lost you.
Now?
I lost you again.
Can you hear me now?
Can you, there is some interruption.
Okay,
Okay, then, yeah.
I can type my question here. Basically, what I'm thinking about, with the culture difference, all these models are developed in the Western culture. What do you think about, the application with our Asian, in our Asian culture with our students, right? We're used to be in a passive position. A lot of times just sitting there listening. But now it seems like the learner-centered system, they need to take more initiatives. So basically, I want to hear you and all the participants what everyone thinks about this. You hear my question?
Okay. Yeah. Can we get from the participant what they think about it? So it's about that this is one of the problems is that during debriefing, if you look into the learner center debriefing is on the culture perspective. So this has been highlighted with one, I think, where is it just now? In one of the slide. Where is it? No. So anything from the rest of the participant, if you would like to say something first. So the question is that, and how we are going to tackle this kind of issue, especially on our in our culture perspective, in our Asian culture perspective. So I can add on my point of view.
So
Anybody?
I sent the question also through the chat box. So yeah. Let's see if anyone.
All right. Let me answer this question. But again, it depends because when you look into Asian country, because we are quite a big region as well. So even though we are under one Asian countries, it could be our culture is different from one country to another country, and within the country itself as well, there are different cultures that could be make the different attributes to the learners. And one is very famous, which is also you tap in there is a passive learners. So how we can apply these learner-centered models in our students? All right. I think based on my experience with the debriefing is that if we do it, it depends on the method that we use and how we are going to approach the student. We'll try as much as possible to guide them, but ask them to speak up, okay, and not to neglect them as well. If they're among the passive student learners within the group, we can start on them first, and then we can ask the other learners as well to help him or her in the process, so that by giving the time to the student. But sometimes if it's too passive, there is only like they're unable to contribute something. I think the best way is to have the mixed method. So which means that we have to apply our instructor centered debriefing as well, but not to the extent that we have to tell them 100%, but to guide them. So for a start. So what the rest of you, what do you think about it? Based on your experience, perhaps?
Yeah, just it will be interesting to hear about the experience. Everyone has experience. I mean, I'm sure you all had the debriefing experience. How did you really get students to take more initiative in the process? You can type type the question here too, right? In the chat box. Well, we see, okay, I'm just trying to see if anyone typing. So maybe, can you share, like, your experience? Other people might not, I don't know whether they might have a technical problem, try to talk or try to post their comments. Maybe can you share your experience, share one example,
Okay. All right. I think based on my experience doing debriefing and then looking into this article as well, honestly, I hope that I wish that when I first started, I have read this article, have it as a reference. So when we start our simulation, basically is that we don't actually have a proper like a guideline how we are going to do the debriefing. And then after then we, by attending some of the conferences and the workshop that is done in debriefing, then we create our own style. So we should, if I look into these articles and how we are doing it is actually on both sides. Most of it is a mixed method between the instructor as well as the students. So we are actually in this in this part. So we don't do a lot of the teaching or giving them straight away that feedback. So when we look into students who are passive, again, you want me to share the experience. How I did it is actually in our setting, when we do the simulation, we have like a minimum of 5 students and then up to 20 students. So which means that they do the same scenario, and then they're going to split by group. And then toward the end of the session, all of them will be sit down together, and then I will ask them, and each of them, usually is each of them, how they feel about it. That is where we usually start with. So asking them what they have done. I usually start with what the scenario is all about. So that one is to just to capture their knowledge, and then after that, what they think about their performance, what they do best, and what they don't, what they have learned from their experience. But again, when we talk about passive learners, sometimes it's quite difficult as well. But what I did is usually that I seldom neglect them. I'll put them first on the spotlight. If I know them, they are the passive one, so they will contribute. From there on, I will ask the others as well to help the student. How or sometimes is one way is to, the easiest way is then asking them what they did during the simulation, or what, especially for the passive learner, what is he did during the simulation, and then identify some of the skill that sometimes they will go straight away into the skill. So we look into the skill, what skill they perform. So from there on, what do you think about the skill? So how you do it?
Thank you.
And then more detail on that by help the others can contribute as well. So that is some of the way we are doing it.
Okay.
I guess the rest have the experience as well. That is what to share as well. So yeah, we can learn from others as well.
Yeah, I see Ismail posted his comment. He said, he said in Asia the debriefing is slightly different. He said he would like to share his experience, but the mic on his computer doesn't work. So I don't see him. He typed a couple minutes ago. I don't see him here anymore. Anyone else besides, Amin's experience? Yeah, I don't know why I don't see. Ismo is still there. Hi, Ismail. Can you please share your experience? You can type through the chat box. I see him there. Anyone else? You know, so the whole idea for the webinar is like we can share the ideas, share questions. So Amin shared his experience. What's the rest? What do you guys think? Okay, he said he's mute. Okay, can you talk now, Ismail? I did
Hello?
to him. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Hello?
Hey, we can.
Hello? Okay.
Hello, yeah, we
All
can
right,
hear you.
hi. I've been listening to you all, but I cannot speak. I was muted.
Oh, sorry.
Javier doesn't want to hear my voice.
No, love to.
Okay, carry on. So the expert is here.
Well, no expert, but I think I agree with a lot of what Adam Cheng was mentioning in this paper. And I was interested in one of the things that he said that you know in the balance methods, they said that there's some differences in terms of the national, because you have to take time, national culture, and the knowledge and experience of learners. And he pointed out in Asian countries, not all, but I think in some Asian countries, I think this is a real issue. For your information, I just completed our ACLS course, which is just about now, and the attendees, most of them are nurses, only one doctor, and it is that's why I would like to share this thing, because initially I wanted to go for a learning center where I will try to stimulate their thinking, try to stimulate them to learn, discover themselves, but it's very difficult. One of the reasons that I found is that is the way how they were brought up. This is what the experience in Malaysia. When they were young and when they go to school or even they go to the nursing school, all of them are not encouraged to speak. All of them are encouraged to listen and follow, even when they go to work. So this is like a culture being ingrained in them, and that's why it's like a culture shock if you ask them to speak. Okay, I think it's true, because I don't know how the nurses in Singapore is, but in Malaysia especially, we can hardly hear them to talk against a higher hierarchical level to them, doctors or something. They can talk among themselves, but they don't really talk among their teachers or something. So they're more of the listening and passive. And when you give them the opportunity, they feel that you are testing them, and as though that you're going to just like opening up a pit hole and just waiting for them to drop into the pit hole, and then this thing. So it is basically a lot of it. I think experience, the way how they were brought up, the way how they were culturally ingrained in the education do play a big role. That's why I was when I was reading this paper 2 days ago, I was like, hey, this is good, and I was trying to apply. So at the end of the day, when we completed our ACLS here, I think we have, or I basically moved back towards the teacher-centered or instructor-centered. Well, I can say about 70%.
Well, I think we lost Ismail's voice, right? I mean.
Yeah, I think still there. It's my, because cannot see anything on my slide here.
Yeah, I think I have to, I agree with him. It's quite typical in Asia. I think it's not just in Malaysia. In Brunei, probably similar. Like Singapore, Hong Kong, have more influence the Western culture. But the rest of Asia, like China, Japan, South Korea, it's all quite very hierarchy, right? So basically, the junior barely see things. But I remember last year at the AMA conference, the European Conference for Medical Education, Thomas Lin from Taiwan and I and a few other colleagues, we did a presentation. So what I learned from Thomas is I thought is very interesting. We all know, so Thomas has been working with Paul for a long time, right? He has been trying to promote Paul's the guest model in doing debriefing. What Thomas shared is based on his experience in Taiwan. A lot of times it's the reason why the students, they are mute, they don't talk much. It's the way how we ask the question that plays a big role. He shared with us, he tried to change the way how to ask by asking differently. Surprisingly, the students, the trainees in the junior level, they would start talking. So that's why I think it's really hard to see, in our Asian culture, whether I think the student-centered way they will work, but really depends on how you do it, how you make that part happen, but also really depends on the context, in certain contexts, you have to, the instructor, you have to be in a leading role. So that's why I agree. I think the mixed model should be the way to go. However, the remaining, it still remains a question like how can we really adopt this in our Asian culture, in the hierarchy, the typical culture in our healthcare profession. I think that's what I want to share.
I think another one as well, Ismail have talked about, you have mentioned as well about the hierarchy thing. And then I think in our part, it could be because of the school system as well. The school system where basically is that more into the teacher-centered kind of learning, and not till the recent one that try moving into the student, so giving the student the opportunity to have the on as well. So we want to see that what is the outcome of this learning style in the future, but we will not see it now because it's just been introduced a couple of years ago, so a change of the school system. And then the second one, I think a bit of on what I've noticed from the student as well, especially the student, is I bet is more on the personal attributes, whereby the student is a very passive student, whereby sometimes when I ask them why they don't want to contribute, is that first one they said is that they're not confident with their answer, and then they're afraid that their answer, they call it a stupid answer, and another one is that sometimes they don't want, could be this is more a personal one, but they don't feel like to share what they are thinking about the process, or they feel shy as well. So that is some, I guess, from our side.
Yeah, we also see our participants typing here. The comment I just saw now is, I think to change is we need to look back into the root of the problem, to do the root cause analysis. Then it should be multiple approaches here. First, we need to educate the educators and change their mindset. That's totally true. When we are talking about the student centered is important, but many of the instructors, they don't know. We should teach them. So the next ones, we also need to look into students and change student mindset too. That's Ismo types here. So I totally agree. Yeah, basically, I think summarize the discussion very well. He thinks both parts, the teacher and student, both the starting part is we should to teach them, let them know you need to take more initiative in the process. Yeah, if you see the chat box, what now is sending the text there. Students should be allowed to speak up in school. Let them express their feelings and opinions. Really depends on the lecturer. Really depends on the teacher to make a student-centered approach. The third one is the environment. This Ismo is typing. I think, Yeah, the environment, I would say probably is the bigger culture, you know. If like you are in one of the hospital or medical school or the nursing school, you promote, you know, the student-centered approach. I think that make a difference. Okay, he's still typing. We need to create the environment that's more friendly and conducive. Totally true. Yeah. So just while he's still typing, I think another thing we're talking about, do not.
I think this is the one with the environment. The
Yeah.
one that you mentioned, I think, is more friendly. It depends on how the instructor, the teacher is actually approach, and then how he set the debriefing environment, and then the tone of the voice as well, and then his or her approach to receiving the information or receiving the opinion from the student that will allow some of the student to voice out rather than a very stringent method, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think he summarized really well here, right? He's also talking about we need to create an environment that's more friendly and conducive. Do not create intimidation. Students are now all the time undergrad students. Some of them, they are postgrad students and specialists. Um, so they don't give active, basically they don't participate actively. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's the whole system, you know, problem here. If we want to make change, really should try all different means, you know, to make this happen. That all the key stakeholders should be involved to make this happen. Okay, he said number 4, we need to do a study to explore what do students want, how they want to study. For this part is more, I can share one thing. I did a study last year with the medical students in Singapore. Basically asked them, we were talking about feedback. I mean, the feedback sort of debriefing can be part of that. Ask them what you think about the feedback you receive in medical school. So the students here, what they express is they do not get enough feedback. Also in the process, yes, the instructor normally they are the one taking the lead. Students are in a passive role. Yeah. I mean, we did that study in Singapore. Would be interesting, yeah, to find out in other countries too. Okay, I think you all can read there too. He said, all of you know there might be different approaches to debriefing that's suitable in our Asian country compared to the West. So we have another participant side. Do you think it helps if students are told early on the objective of the session so they can be more prepared? That's true. Actually, what I was going to say is, I mean, maybe you can keep talking. I receive a few messages. Let me check. I think from Ismail and from our friend from China.
You said about the to give the you mean to give the objective to the student beforehand?
Yeah.
Or do you? Okay. So which means that will be go into our own objective as well. But again, we need to if you look into the articles, so the approach need to be we need to get the objective from the students so that we can blend in on both.
Yeah.
In a way, it can help the student as well. I think it depends on how much they know about the scenario as well that can contribute their participation and how they're going to give their opinion is one thing. Is the knowledge on the specific session of the scenario that is going to be presented, I guess.
Yeah.
To give it beforehand, it could be a good ideas. Can be tried as well, and then see how it goes.
Yeah, I see more interesting posting here. Thank you so much for the participation, everyone. Although you guys are very shy now talking, but you are very active typing the message here. So yeah, so the other person side, will help if we switch the role, let students play the facilitator's role, and then that will make them realize the importance of debriefing. Totally true. I totally agree. So the other, Judy posted here, setting a safe environment, totally true, should provide enough time for students to answer the questions. If they won't be giving enough time, they will think, basically the students, the debriefing need enough time. That's totally true. I totally agree. So Ismo did mention Singapore might be slightly different from Malaysia. Totally true. He has experience both in Malaysia and Singapore. Well, it would be great, the study I did, you use the same questionnaire, collect the data in Malaysia and in the other country too, and then we can compare the difference in the data. Suresh also posted here, yes, students, if know they are going to achieve what they are going to achieve, and then the learning material will be more, they will participate more. That's totally true. Same like us, if we prepare, we will be more willing, more confident to participate. So Ismo, the last thing he said, the other factor why student is passive is that, the preparedness is similar like Suresh mentioned. Yeah, they need to really prepare more. Well, I think we have a very interesting discussion here, right? I mean,
yeah, I think to add on as well. One is the briefing. The briefing phase of the simulation is also we shouldn't take it for granted. So the briefing part of it, that will prepare the student as well on what, or prepare them and anticipate what has been expected from them.